What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Hutch Coming in Clutch. I'm your host, Hutchison Brown, and today we've got a fantastic show. We are doing another mock draft episode. Want to make sure I got a couple of these in through the month of August because while we could talk about sleepers, busts, breakouts, all those things, we will throughout this next month before football season kicks off. It's important to actually get dirty, get your hands dirty in some mock drafts so I can really show you my thought process, my strategies, how I look at other teams. And while last episode of a mock draft, we really focused on my team, my strategies, how I'm thinking about what I want to do in the draft. Today, we'll be doing a little differently. Every single round that goes by, obviously, I'm going to focus on my team and how I build it and draft and give you my thought process there. But I also want to give a focus on where I see values and where I see players being overdrafted or underdrafted, and focusing on the vibe of the draft and where it's going throughout the draft, not just with my team, but with the whole draft in general. You're going to see a broader perspective of how I draft today, how I look at the draft today. So you get some strategies there. So without further ado, before we get into the podcast today, please follow me on Twitter. I'm at HutchisonB_FF. Make sure you check out Hutch Come to Clutch wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe so you be notified every single time a new episode does drop. And then, adding on to that, one last thing, check out my work over at Football Guys. I've been doing a lot of writing with them, do a lot of podcast stuff with them, do some stuff behind the scenes on their Discord a ton, in their Football Guys answering questions, their GOAT forums. I'm all over the place, man. Go check me out, footballguys.com, all the work I do over there. Now, without further ado, let's get into the mock draft today. So, last time we drafted at number 3. Today we are going at number 6. And this is going to be an interesting range of the draft because I'm right in the middle. There we go. The draft has started. And here we go. Jamar Chase, Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, Justin Jefferson, Jahmyr Gibbs. So overall in this first half of this first round, I don't see any picks that really shock me. Jamar Chase going 101, Bijan 102, Saquon 103, Jefferson 1-4, and Gibbs 1-5. I think this is all very fair. I mean, anything I'd have in difference of rankings is very slight, very just splitting hairs. So I'm not going to make any complaints or any comments here. But I'm going to go CeeDee Lamb at 6. I have him ranked personally as my wide receiver 2. Very excited to see what CeeDee Lamb does, to see where Dak Prescott in this offense. It's going to have to rely heavily on the passing game. Also, when you look at Dak Prescott last year, career low in touchdown percentage, one of his career lows. I expect that to go up this year. I expect him to be healthy this year, and for CeeDee Lamb to have a great season. He's just a couple years removed from having a 23.5 point per game season in PPR scoring. So Lamb at 1-6, I'm feeling good about that. Now, looking at this next round, I'm on some Ross St. Brown, Puka Nacua, Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, Malik Neighbors, Brock Bowers, Drake London at the turn. Then we have Ashton Genty, Nico Collins, Devon Achane, Brian Thompson, A.J. Brown. Now, one comment I'd make on this round, looking at this draft as a whole, a player that I think is out of place in this ADP is Devon Achane. We look at him at the 2-4. I think in most drafts where people are really paying attention, he might go a little later. Obviously, this is all computer draft. But Achane in the early second is a really tough sell for me. Not because he's not talented, not because he has a great opportunity in front of him. Like, he has everything set up for him. He's just dealing with that injury, man. That calf injury seems really concerning. You know, when you look at a player like Achane, very, very dependent on big explosive plays, his burst, his quick twitch ability, and that speed. When you look at a calf injury, a soft tissue injury, that lower body for a running back, that really affects those abilities. And I think Devon Achane could start off the season not playing football, and then when he comes back, has not only a high risk of re-injury rate, what is he going to look like when he's actually on the field playing with that calf injury? So Devon Achane is somebody that I think I'm really starting to get worried about as we head into this season. That calf injury looks really poor. So he's someone that I rank more in the late second, maybe early third, even at this point. I have him ranked at RB10, so that's going to put him, back a second, early third. But otherwise, this looks pretty normal so far. We're to keep going here. So I have CeeDee Lamb, and then I have a choice here. I could go quarterback with Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. I tend not to lean this direction, a quarterback in the second round. I think I like the value more in the third, fourth if I'm going to take one of those big 5 quarterbacks. So at this point, I'm probably looking at running back or wide receiver or tight end. And I think the name that's really screaming my name here, I'm going to go with Jonathan Taylor, running back of the Indianapolis Colts. Daniel Jones was just named the starting quarterback for the team. And Shane Steichen made it pretty clear that he's going to be the starting quarterback throughout the entirety of the season. And that's pretty good for fantasy football for Jonathan Taylor. Daniel Jones is not afraid to dump off the football, and he can manage an offense well. He can manage an offense okay. He's able to get the ball to his playmakers and make things happen. We saw the Giants' offense actually look not horrifically bad in the first few weeks when Malik Nabers was doing really well. Daniel Jones has Tyler Warren, Michael Pittman, Josh Downs if he's healthy, and Adonai Mitchell, a second-year wide receiver, could break out this year. And then obviously Jonathan Taylor. This is an offense that Daniel Jones could be able to manage to at least mediocre numbers. And Jonathan Taylor is going to be relied on heavily with a questionable quarterback in play. He could have a huge season this year. So I like Jonathan Taylor in the second round. He just feels like one of those running backs that's a stud, but he's a little older, and no one's talking about him. Like, no one gives a crap about Jonathan Taylor right now. I'm happy to take him in the mid-second. So now let's look here at this next range of the draft. You have Jonathan Taylor, Ladd McConkey, Bucky Irving, Josh Jacobs, Tyreek Hill, Lamar Jackson, Chase Brown, Josh Allen, Trey McBride, Jack Smith-Njigba, and Kyron Williams. So as we start to get later in the draft, you're going to see me making more and more comments about players that I think fit in this ADP and players that I think don't fit in this ADP. First things first, let's talk about Tyreek Hill. In the second round, I have a really hard time with this selection. The arguments for Tyreek Hill are that Miami's secondary sucks and that the passing volume in Miami is going to have to be heavily reliant, especially considering that Devon Achane's hurt right now, which significantly hurts their running game. And then as well with Hill, you got a lot of motivation for him this year, man. I mean, coming off a bit of a down year, looking to bounce back, Tyreek Hill's one of those players that if you get him motivated, he can do a lot of great things. So that's in play as well. But there are many arguments against him, and it primarily surrounds the fact that it looked like he might have fallen off last year. He really struggled last year in terms of yards after catch. When you look at his GPS speeds, they weren't there. There were some drop problems for Hill. When you look at his speed on the field, not just in GPS and the numbers, but sometimes his speed on the field was a little underwhelming. Like going back and watching 2016, 2018 Tyreek Hill, he would have easily been able to make the play that 2024 Tyreek Hill did not make. And that's really concerning to see. And, as a 31-year-old player, usually athleticism goes first for these wide receivers. And Tyreek Hill without athleticism is not Tyreek Hill I want my fantasy rosters in the second round of fantasy drafts. I just can't pay up for him at 31 years old. I can't pay up for him after what we saw last year. Second round's tough. And then the quarterbacks in the second round. The big five are great. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jane Daniels, Jalen Hurts, and Joe Burrow. That's a great five that you can look at. But in the second round, it's just really hard. I'd rather pay less for the Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Jane Daniels in like the third, fourth, fifth round than pay a high premium for someone like Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen in the second round when you can get a stud running back or receiver. And then last thing I'd comment on is Trey McBride, man. Third round Trey McBride's great. I mean, I'd pay up for him in the second round, but he's just going to be the steam engine of this offense. So you have Marvin Harrison on the outside. Obviously, he's a wide receiver one, but Trey McBride's probably going to be a monster in the middle of the field at the tight end position. He's hyper athletic. He's able to make all plays in the field at the tight end position. And then you look at what he did last year. He was basically the tight end one. And then when you look at his touchdown production, it was incredibly low. You give that man a few more touchdowns, we're looking at the tight end one overall here in fantasy football, and you're getting that in the third round. That tight end advantage is huge. Happy to take Trey McBride in the third round if he's there, even in the second if he's there. And then now I'm here on the clock. I got to make a pick. And I'm going to go, there's only one wide receiver left that's ranked inside my wide receiver ones, and that is T. Higgins. I think at this value, he's a great play because when you look at Joe Burrow in this offense and what we're set to do here, this defense still look bad. We've seen it in preseason. This starting defense looks absolutely horrific. I mean, second players, third string players are scoring on this first team defense. Like, it's been horrifically bad to watch. And you look at the players on the roster, and it's just simple. Like, this defense is not going to be good this year. It's simply not going to be that great. And it's going to be similar to what happened in 2024, where the Bengals are going to have to pass a ton to keep up and win some games. T. Higgins, as long as he's healthy, is a huge part of that. He was a top 10 wide receiver in points per game when he was fully healthy on the field. I could absolutely see a world where Jamar Chase finishes like the wide receiver 4 this year and T. Higgins like the wide receiver 9. Like, that is a very realistic world that we live in right now in 2025 with this Bengals offense. The targets are so consolidated between these two guys. I have T. Higgins personally ranked as my wide receiver 12. I haven't ranked as wide receiver 1 this year. Yes, the health concerns are there, but if he's healthy, the dude's a monster, and I'm happy to take him in the third round. So now let's look at the rest of this draft, see how it went. If there anybody that screams out to me at ADP, obviously Jane Daniels, Jalen Hurts in the third and fourth round. I like those values at quarterback better than I do Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. George Kittle in the fourth is an absolute monstrous steal. When you look at Jawan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, and the Brandon Ayuk, they're all dealing with injuries right now. And the problem with that is George Kittle's left the only receiving option on this team. I mean, the 49ers are so desperate. They just traded for Sky Moore with a 6th, 7th round pick swap. I mean, it's just desperate times right now for the 49ers at wide receiver and even at running back. They don't have many pass catcher options at running back besides Christian McCaffrey. Like, it's really going to be the George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey show in San Francisco. And you see Team 10 here took both of them with their team. I don't mind that at all because you're getting probably 50+%, maybe 60+%, maybe even 70% of the 49ers offensive production here, at least in the beginning of the season with George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey. Like, these two are going to be humongous pieces of this offense. And then a player I might comment on as a negative here. Honestly, no one. Everyone belongs here at ADP. Maybe James Cook a little bit. That touchdown regression is a little nerve-wracking, but he got the contract. He's back at training camp. That's great to see. Hopefully, he's in football shape for the start of the season. But otherwise, everybody at ADP looks pretty reasonable here. Now I'm on the clock. I got to make a pick. I could get Joe Burrow and stack him with T. Higgins and finish that stack, get the last of the big five at quarterback. And honestly, looking at the rest of the names on the board and looking what I could get later at wide receiver and running back, I think that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going Joe Burrow here at the 4-7. Now, Devontae Adams, Mike Evans, DJ Moore, Rashee Rice, DK Metcalf, Cortland Sutton, David Montgomery, Patrick Mahomes, Sam Laporta, and George Pickens go. Now, a couple names that I'm going to be upfront with here. Sam Laporta, man, I think this is a huge reach at ADP. You're grabbing him right in the tier with Trey McBride, George Kittle in the 5th round, like just right below those two names. I think that's a really hard reach. I have Sam Laporta ranked as my tight end 7 right now, and I just don't see a world where he finishes inside the top 4. I really don't. When you look at Jameson Williams, when you look at Amon-Ra St. Brown, when you look at Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, those 4 players command so much of this offense that there's just no room left. Sam Laporta is a great red zone threat. He'll score a handful of touchdowns this year. But outside of that, I just don't see volume coming his way. I don't see consistency coming his way, especially considering that I think Jameson Williams is going to have a huge breakout this year. That's all the coaching staff's been talking about. We saw him finish tight end 1 overall as a rookie. That was great, but then he took a huge step back because of the Jameson Williams step up in year 2. And now even more so, Jameson Williams could step up in year 3. And that just leaves so little room for Sam Laporta to be good for fantasy. I personally have him ranked again as my tight end 7 or my tight end 8, I think, actually. And at this price range, I'm just out. I can't do it with him. And then also another player that I have a hard time with. Actually, you know what? We'll get to that later. You know what? I'm going to hold that one off for now. And I'm going to go ahead and make a pick here. I have a bunch of choices I can make. And I have 2 receivers, 1 running back, a quarterback. And remember, this is a 2 running back, 3 receiver, 1 tight end, 1 flex, 1 quarterback league. And it's PPR scoring. So I'm having a hard choice here because I'm not considering Trayvon Henderson here because he's not available at this range. That's just not going to happen. So I'm literally not even considering him. His ADP is way higher than this. And then looking at the rest of the board, I mean, I got Jameson Williams and Isaiah Pacheco as my highest ranked players. I get a lot of JMA. I'm going to try to go Isaiah Pacheco here and see how I feel about it. I'm going to get Isaiah Pacheco, the running back for the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm feeling really good about him this year. Listen, hear me out for a second. Yes, it was a 2-game sample size that he was actually healthy last year. But in those 2 games, the Chiefs showed us everything we wanted to know about how they wanted to use Isaiah Pacheco. And that is a lot. They gave him a ton of touches, not only in the rushing game and in the receiving game. He was 73+% snap share, and he was getting so much volume to the point where he was on pace for over 1,600 total scrimmage yards. He was on pace to finish as a top 15 running back in points per game if he had just stayed healthy. I think we would have been looking at a huge season for him if he was just healthy last year. The injury last year, along with the time after he was back on the field way too soon, really hurt his draft stock. And now looking towards this season, obviously the backfield's his. It's a Wash Kareem Hunt, Brashard Smith. Like, it's nobody else. This is Isaiah Pacheco's backfield. We're entering a contract year, which is huge for running backs. I'm really excited to see what we see out of Isaiah Pacheco this year. I've been ranked as a top 20 running back. Very hyped about him. But looking at the rest of this ADP now as guys went, I mean, Jameson Williams, fantastic pick. I don't think Travis Kelce's worth the pick at tight end 5 off the board. I haven't personally ranked much lower. We saw the beginning and the end for Travis Kelce last year. Looking at where he was last year, as efficiency, yards after catch, where you watched him on the field. You looked at his production being so inconsistent. He wasn't the same player. He really wasn't. And looking at his age at 35, it's really hard for me to want to take him as a tight end 5 overall when I could realistically see all the wheels falling off this year. And then also with this ADP, a name I want to shout out, someone that's being really undervalued, I think, is Calvin Ridley in PPR formats. Because when you look at Calvin Ridley this year, I've been doing a August preseason report for the Tennessee Titans for Football Guys. You go check out those articles over at footballguys.com. Great pieces if you're looking to keep up with the preseason right now. I've been specifically focused on the Titans for Football Guys. And one thing I've really seen is that Calvin Ridley is developing an elite connection with Cam Ward, and nobody else on the receiving team is. Like Cam Ward and Calvin Ridley are the only duo on this offense. There is nobody else that is really competing with Calvin Ridley for the number one target share. I expect a 25 to 30% target share this year for Calvin Ridley. And I know it's a rookie quarterback who don't do great for their fantasy wide receivers, but 25 to 30% target share is a 25 to 30% target share on offense that doesn't have an elite defense that's probably going to have to throw a little bit. You're looking at Calvin Ridley as a great option in fantasy football. Now, it's going to be gross. It might not often be fun to watch because Cam Ward might struggle a little bit here and there. He's a rookie quarterback. We have to give him some grace. But the volume's going to be there. I expect at least a baseline of like 7 targets a game. That's going to give you fantasy relevance. So you have to take Calvin Ridley when you get to that 6th, 7th range. It's just so nice to get him in that range of the draft. And honestly, otherwise, I'm not looking at anybody as crazy picks here. I love Ted McMillan. That target upside in Bryce Young's offense could be huge. Keep an eye on him. But now I'm on the clock and I got to make a pick. I could go another running back with DeAndre Swift, who I absolutely love, and I actually have ranked above Isaiah Pacheco. I just like Pacheco in that pick, and I knew I could get Swift later if I wanted to. But looking at the receivers on the board, I'm just not feeling anybody crazy right now. I mean, I could go Jalen Waddle if I feel that Tyreek Hill's going to fall off. Jalen Waddle could be very, very involved in the offense. With Joe Flacco starting, Jerry Jeudy gets very interesting. Chris Olave should have a big-time target share. You have Roma Dunze down the board. I think, and when I look at it, I think DeAndre Swift is my clearly cut highest ranked player right now overall. And I think I'm just going to have to go in that direction, see what wide receivers fall to me. I'm going to go with DeAndre Swift, get that 3-pack of running backs, and just figure out wide receiver later in the draft. So then after me, now I want to talk about quarterbacks. Real quick. So Patrick Mahomes, Baker Mayfield, Bo Nix go in the rounds after the big 5. This is not what you want to do in your fantasy drafts. These 3 quarterbacks, Bo Nix, Patrick Mahomes, Baker Mayfield, and maybe even a couple of guys after that, that 5th to 8th round range of quarterbacks, do not draft them. The big 5 at quarterback with Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Jane Daniels, and Jalen Hurts, they separate themselves from the rest. Joe Burrow with that elite passing volume and touchdown upside that he has, and the other 4 with their elite rushing ability, along with their passing ability and their weapons they have in their offense. These guys are difference makers. Then when you look at Patrick Mahomes, Baker Mayfield, Bo Nix, Jared Goff, Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert, Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott, C.J. Stroud, Caleb Williams, Drake May, Justin Fields, J.J. McCarthy, these are all players that I could absolutely see finishing as a QB1 this year, and all players I could absolutely see finishing as like QB 15 this year, 18 this year. There's such a wide range for these quarterbacks. All of them have upside, all of them have downside, that you just make such a huge tier here of questionable quarterbacks. Don't reach for a player in a huge tier. Do not take the first of a huge tier, because you are just reaching for a guy that's not going to make a difference for you. Like, I don't see that big of a difference between Patrick Mahomes for fantasy this year and like Dak Prescott or C.J. Stroud. I don't see a humongous difference. Even though there's solid separation in my rankings, I don't see a huge difference for fantasy football there, because in that tier, it's just a ton of question marks for quarterback. If you have somebody you have a real conviction on, and go for it. Like, I really like Justin Fields this year. I'm willing to take him a little higher. But outside of that, I'm just not reaching for these quarterbacks in this middle round range. I'm waiting for value to fall if I don't get one of the big 5. So anyways, let's focus now back to wide receiver or back to whatever position I want to take. So looking at the board right now, there's a couple names I could take at tight end, but I think someone's going to make it back to me that I like, considering that looking at the draft right now, 4 of the next 6 teams on the turn do already have tight end. So there's going to be a tight end that I want on the way back, and there's not going to be as many wide receivers. I need to take a wide receiver here at this moment to get a guy I want. And this might be a little crazy, but the highest ranked wide receiver on my board right now is Emeka Ibuka. And I'm not going to play games because I know at this range in the 7th round, he's going to be gone if I don't take him in like analyst leagues and home leagues because of how hyped he's gotten. I'm just going to grab him here, Emeka Ibuka. I'm very, very excited to see what we see from him this season. Like a lot of people saying, oh, he could like flash a little bit. He could be a nice rookie pick, sleeper pick. I mean, I think this dude could be easily a top 20 wide receiver this year. I haven't ranked a wide receiver 29, and I feel bad. I feel like that's a little low for him. I feel like he could be a monster in fantasy football this season. When you look at the offense, you have Mike Evans as wide receiver 1, who's like 32 years old, we don't know what he's going to do this year. We don't know if the cliff is coming this year. We have no idea. Then you look at Chris Godwin. That injury, that ankle injury, is not good. The contract they gave him this offseason proves that he's healthy, but he is not healthy. Like all the reports coming out are incredibly negative. He might not play week 1. And even if he does play week 1, it doesn't seem like he's going 100%, which means, and then you have Jalen McMillan, with that neck injury, he's probably going to miss a lot of the season. And then you have Cade Otton, who's a fine tight end. Emeka Ibuka has a very clear path to start the season as the wide receiver 2 for the offense in that slot role. And I'm just telling you one thing. When you get a rookie wide receiver on fire in the first month or 2 of the season, it doesn't matter who comes back. You keep targeting that rookie wide receiver. You keep giving him the football because it was a first-round pick. That's your freaking future right there. You give that kid the football if he's on fire. So if he gets off to a hot start as a wide receiver 2 in this offense, there's no stopping him. He's going to be a monster this year in fantasy. So I love that pick. And then now, looking at the tight end position, I have a couple choices here. So Tyler Warren went. I would have loved to grab Tyler Warren, talk about him. I think he's a great pick at ADP right now. Obviously, rookie tight end going as a tight end 1. That's not always fun to think about. It's not always fun to grab because rookie tight ends sometimes start slow. But Tyler Warren in preseason, he's looked like a professional out there. He's running elite routes. He's making great plays after the catch with the football in his hands. And with Daniel Jones in the offense, you're expecting some stability for the passing game. And Tyler Warren is emerging as the number 1 target in this offense. He's not leaving the field in the first team in training camp. He didn't leave the field with the first team in the preseason game. He's getting a boatload of targets in every asset of the game right now. He's getting handoffs. He's getting jet sweeps. I think Shane Steichen's going to get really creative with this kid because you can use him in a lot of different facets of the game. Very excited to see what Warren does this year as a rookie tight end. And then looking at tight end now, there's a name on the board that I think people are extremely undervaluing considering the news on the Browns offense recently that Joe Flacco is a starting quarterback. Last time Joe Flacco was a starting quarterback, there was like a 7-game stretch of that a couple of years ago. David Njoku was overall the 10-1 in fantasy, and I'm going to take David Njoku here in the 8th round. I think that's an absolute steal considering that Joe Flacco is the starting quarterback. Yes, a rookie could come in later, but at least for the first 8 or so weeks of the season, I have potentially a guy that could be the tight end 1 overall in fantasy football. And at this range of the draft, really happy to get that because if you're not getting the tight end advantage early, that sucks. If you can get the tight end advantage with a sleeper pick, you're rocking it, man. You're doing great jobs. And I think David Njoku could definitely be that. Now, at this point in the draft, right, I have 3 receivers, 3 running backs, a quarterback, a tight end. This is the point of the draft where, like, you have a few quarterbacks, a few running backs, you have some depth. This is time you start taking dart throws, man. We're approaching that double-digit range. You start taking some guys where it's like, all right, maybe this is good, maybe this isn't. I got to take my shot. I got to go for it. Here we go. Let's see. And honestly, look, I never mind. I won't say anything there. Actually, no, yeah. Let's talk about Tucker Kraft for a second because I honestly miss Tucker Kraft. I saw him on the board and I was like, yeah, I could take him. I've made the Tucker Kraft argument before. And honestly, based on my rankings, I would have taken Tucker Kraft in the 8th round or maybe waited and got him in the 9th round. But I really wanted to take Njoku and talk about him for a second because that's the thing I was doing here. I'm not strictly drafting based on my rankings here. I'm drafting the guys I really want to talk about, and that's David Njoku. But Tucker Kraft, obviously a fantastic tight end option I'm really excited about this year. But anyways, let's get back to the draft here. Looking at who went in the next picks, anyone that I feel is extremely out of ADP, maybe Matthew Golden at the 8th round. I just don't see him establishing himself or stepping above the competition in this offense. I think you're going to get another Jaden Reed season where it's inconsistent, touchdowns here and there, just not fun for fantasy football on a player you want to start on a weekly basis. And obviously it's the 8th round. You're taking some shots, but I really don't see it with Matthew Golden, man. He was never able to establish himself as a wide receiver 1 in college. I just don't see him being able to do it in the NFL. And if you're expecting that out of him in any way, it's just trouble. And then also, Brian Robinson, the trade rumors are really frustrating. You could see him trade to a multitude of places that could be really bad for his fantasy football value. I have a hard time taking him in fantasy drafts. And then Kalisha Kieran, Chris Godwin, both players that are set to probably miss week 1 due to some serious injuries, especially, I mean, honestly, both of them, lower leg injuries that really affect explosiveness, route running ability, and yards with the catch ability. Both Godwin and Shakir really rely on all those things. Really hard to want either of them in fantasy football drafts. Now, looking at the board right now, I could go Jordan Mason. Really interesting committee back with Aaron Jones. If Aaron Jones were to go down or fall off, Jordan Mason could have a huge year this year in that Vikings offense. You could go Jaden Reed. Obviously, had 1,000 yards last year in that slot role, but he's dealing with a bit of an injury right now. It's hard to trust him fully. And then looking down the board, I mean, obviously, I got some wide receivers later that I like. I have some wide receivers later that I think are okay. Some running backs as well. I mean, there's a lot of positions here. There's a lot of positions that I'm perfectly fine with later. I got to make a decision now. I'm going to go with some league winning upside on Jordan Mason. I really do believe it. When you look at Aaron Jones at his age range, it's really scary for him, especially considering his injury history. Like if Jordan, like I'm just going to say this. Let's say Aaron Jones goes down with an ACL tear today. I think Jordan Mason would legit be ranked as a top 15 running back in fantasy drafts, potentially even like an RB1. He would be ranked so high because we saw what he did in San Francisco last year when McCaffrey went down. That would be huge for his fantasy ball value. So if Aaron Jones were to ever go down, like I have a league winning kind of option here that I can either keep for myself and, have that and enjoy that, or sell high and see if I can get some serious, really good value. Now, next round comes on. Is there anybody at this next ADP, these next picks that I think are just out of range? I mean, Tucker Kraft, fantastic pick. Then 9-11, great pick there. I don't know why Team 11 didn't, even though they have Tyler Warren, but then you have a bunch of those mediocre quarterbacks that could do something this year, could not. I'm still waiting on quarterback. I'm happy to wait on quarterback. And let's talk about Dalton Kincaid for a second, man. He's someone that's not being talked about at all in the fantasy football world, and I don't get why. I think he could be a really solid option this year. I think Dalton Kincaid is just someone that doesn't have the right usage. Joe Brady and this Bills offense are trying to put him in the classic tight end role where he's doing a lot of blocking, not like playing in the slot like he should be. And Dawson Knox is getting in his way, earning some targets here and there, just taking away from Dalton Kincaid. They just need to change the way they use him. Put him in the big slot role like you put Evan Ingram in Jacksonville, and let Dalton Kincaid cook, man. This is what he's meant to be, and that is not how Buffalo's using him enough right now. They need to put him more in that role. So Dalton Kincaid, big slot, get rid of Dawson Knox, and let Dalton Kincaid cook in this offense. I really am hopeful for him, and I'm willing to take him later in drafts. 10th round feels a little pricey, considering that I really like David Njoku, Colson Loveland, Evan Ingram, Tucker Kraft in this range. But if he falls a little bit later because some people are just not liking him, I'd be willing to take him there. Now let's look. I could take Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is a fun one. Don't want it. There's a couple other names here I'm considering. Michael Pittman, Keon Coleman, a couple interesting wideouts. Rashid Shaheed even later. Then you have some running backs as well, like Jaden Blue, Tank Bigsby, Tajay Spears. He's dealing with that ankle injury, though. That's a rough one. At this point in the draft, my highest ranked wide receiver is Luther Burden, another rookie slot wide receiver that I really like. At this point, in the 10th round, you just got to get your guys, and I'm going this direction. I'm going to be taking Luther Burden. I know I can get him a lot later. And I feel like in most industry drafts, he's going to go around this range, and he's not going to go 3 rounds later like sleepers projecting him. I'm going to take another rookie shot wide receiver, Luther Burden, let that go from there. And then at this point, man, when you look at ADP, I'm looking at guys like, anyone to reach ADP? Is anyone to reach ADP? There's not really. At this point, we're in the double-digit rounds. Everyone's taking shots in their guys. Everyone's taking dart throws. I can see a case for everybody in this range. So right now, at this point, I'm going to focus on my team, the sleepers I really want. Maybe shot some sleepers I see some other teams take that I really like. So at this point in the draft, 4 wide receivers, 4 running backs, a quarterback, a tight end. I'm set at quarterback and tight end, the onesie positions. So at this point, it's just best player available, taking the guys that I want on my team. And here, I'm going to go with another running back that I think could have some serious upside. I'm going to go with Austin Eckler. And you might be like, Austin Eckler? I mean, younger than Derrick Henry, younger than Aaron Jones, was really efficient in the running game last year, one of the most efficient seasons of his career, the most efficient season he's had as a runner since 2019 in terms of yards per carry. When you look at his receiving ability, it's still there. His pass blocking ability, it's still there. And when you look at this offense this year, if Brian Robinson were to leave, obviously everyone's excited about Bill Crosby Merritt, sorry. But this backfield's likely going to be a committee. Chris Rodriguez looked great in the preseason. Austin Eckler's a very serviceable veteran. There's going to be a role for all these guys in this offense, but one of them has a clear-cut role to the pass catching work, and that is Austin Eckler, and that's why I want him here at this 11th round range. Now I have 3 more picks left. Need some wide receiver depth. I have a few options I can go with here. Do I go another rookie? Do I take a potentially safe veteran that could really help me out? Let's see here. Let's see, what can we do? What can we do here? I'm going to take a guy I haven't taken very much in drafts. I just want to see what I could do with him, and that's Marvin Mims here. Marvin Mims really flashed at the end of the season, and the Denver wide receiver 2 role is still wide open. Marvin Mims was an interesting draft pick a couple of years back. He's flashed a little bit in the deep game. Hopefully he can get there. So Marvin Mims is a wide receiver 2 shot in Denver. I'll take that all day. And then we're back up again. Some interesting sleepers here. I don't get the Keenan Allen thing. That's one sleeper I'll point out here. I don't get it. I mean, look, he looked solid last year. He really did. And I was talking about him as somebody that I think should be signed by an NFL team really quickly, when free agency started, but it didn't happen. Teams did not look for him or sign him at all. And could that be Keenan Allen's being picky? Sure. But also teams clearly were not prioritizing him. I mean, he wasn't signed till like a week ago. And now all of a sudden he's back with the Chargers and people are drafting him as a relevant fantasy asset when you have Ladd McConkey in this offense already dominating in that slot role as well as the outside. And then you have Trey Harris and Quentin Johnston and players that can really make an impact. I just don't think Keenan Allen is there. I don't think he's going to make a huge impact in this offense. I see him being a veteran role model for other players. Similar to Adam Thielen, Carolina right now. Now, speaking of Adam Thielen, he's the first player up on the board. I'm not taking Adam Thielen here. I just don't see it with him this year. There's too many other options on the offense now. I'm going to go with a veteran wide receiver here that I think could be really fun for fantasy this year, really safe, dependable in a PPR format, and that's Joshua Palmer. I don't believe in Keon Coleman. I personally really do not believe in Keon Coleman. When you look at his numbers last year, when you look at his ability to separate, when you look at his ability deep ball, 50-50 ball, when you look at his route running tree, it's just everything is not good. He looked terrible last year. There was nothing he did that truly impressed me besides maybe a deep catch every once in a while and a nice end zone grab every once in a while. But it's just, he was so disappointing, incredibly disappointing as a rookie. And I just don't see why anyone is really, really hyped about Keon Coleman after that rookie season. You would need to see a lot of development from him in a year or two to be able to do it. And hey, I mean, Quentin Johnston did it. We saw some development from him. Maybe Keon Coleman can do the same, but I'm not fully betting on it. And Joshua Palmer did great when people went down in Los Angeles. He filled in fantastically. He had some great fantasy football performances, and I will happily take him in the 13th round on a Buffalo offense that seriously needs receiving help with Khalil Shakir down and Keon Coleman not looking great. Now, last pick of the draft, I could go everyone's favorite sleeper, Corey Crosby Merritt, but everyone's going to be taking him earlier than the 14th round right now. I don't think he's going to be available in this range. I'm just going to rule him unavailable. I'm going to take a running back here that I really find interesting. I think I'm reaching down the board a little bit here. I do not care. Ali Gordon. Devon Achane's hurt with that calf injury. Obviously, we talked about it earlier, how I think he's a reach in the early second round. Jalen Wright has looked terrible in preseason. He's had 13 touches for 19 yards. Ali Gordon's had 20 plus touches and he has 120 something yards. The dude is monstrous. When you look at the way he plays football, he's so aggressive, he's physical, he's explosive, he's fast. He's looking like 2023 Ali Gordon in preseason, not 2024. I really think 2023 Ali Gordon is the Ali Gordon we could see in the NFL. 2024 is rough for OSU. They fell apart as a team, and Ali Gordon probably lost motivation to play for them and probably just kind of clocked it in the last few weeks of the season. And that's why we saw mediocre efficiency numbers. But in 2023, that kid was looking like potentially the best running back in college football. I'm happy to take him as a late round flyer for one of the last picks of my draft. And any other sleepers I want to shout out that I see on the board right now, I mean, I would shout Tyjae Spears, but he's got that injury that's really, really tough. That ankle injury that's really not fun to see. Trey Benson, if James Conner were to start to go down or start to break down, you got a really interesting upside running back, the day 2 pick for Arizona last year, and Trey Benson, who really started to look good in the back half of the season. All right, everyone, that's going to be it for the mock draft, and that's going to be it for today's episode of Hutch Coming in Clutch today. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Greatly appreciate you being here. Now, I really hope this mock draft, especially looking at the general view of things, how the draft was flowing, certain players that I think they'll belong at ADPs that they're going at. I really hope this helps you think, how do I dominate my fantasy football draft this coming week or this coming month, this coming season, whenever your draft's coming up. I know we got a couple coming up this week that I'm super hyped for. Hopefully you got some as well that you're hyped for. We'll see you all next week with the next episode. We're talking about all things to help you prepare for your fantasy football drafts this season. See y'all next week.